Our next speaker is State Senator Zach Nunn. Senator Nunn is a Republican from Bondurant, and he is seeking to represent the 3rd Congressional District. And he has an entourage here. He's challenging Cindy Axne. She's an incumbent Democrat from West Des Moines. State Senator Nunn.
Hey, Des Moines resident, thank you very much, and thanks everybody for coming out today. Honestly, I do believe we've got just about half the 3rd District here, so this is our little crew. I appreciate everybody coming out to the State Fair. This is what makes Iowa so great, is that you can have a good old-fashioned conversation. Des Moines Register has hosted this for so many years. I was sharing, this is one of the things that got me interested in being a public servant early on, is watching folks come to the fair, whether you're setting up a booth or whether you're talking with individuals. It's a lot of fun. Now, I'm going to grace us all with the fact that I know it's about 1,000,000 degrees out, and there is a lot of pork chop being grilled just up the street. So we will keep this on target. Guys, my name is Zach Nunn. I grew up here. I'm a 6th-generation Iowan. I had the privilege of growing up kind of in a farming community. Our family raised sheep and row crop. My dad was a teacher over at North High School here. My mom was a nurse down at Methodist, now Unity Point in the OR. Did that for about 30 years. My brother and I grew up here. We were on the east side over on 43rd Court, and have just really loved being part of this community. After school, I went on and served in the U.S. military. I took a position with the U.S. Air Force, flying airborne recon, and that's basically, everybody's seen Top Gun these days. Well, it's nothing like that. Imagine a big school bus with 4 engines flying around the sky. That's about what we did. We did 2 tours in Afghanistan. We were awarded the Air Crew of the Year for saving special forces under fire, and we saved every American. It's a heroic event that was done by a lot of good Americans right here in Iowa. Now, thank you. The real heroes are those who were with us both on the battlefield but at home. Kelly and I, we met each other back in high school, and for many of you who know your high school crush, I was out there on the gridiron on a Friday night trying to get a pretty girl to look at me. Now, I will let you know I was in the marching band, so don't get too excited here. French horn section to saxophone section. And, took me 16 years to work up the courage, but she eventually said yes to going on our first date. And that first week, it wasn't too distant from here. We came out on East Side night, and if a girl sticks with you past East Side night, she's probably worth keeping around. So she was very kind. And we have 6 kids altogether. The 2 oldest are off at their dads. We're a blended family and going through football camp. But this is Olympia Lou. Olympia, you want to say hi?
No.
Hello. She's going to be a much better politician than me. And then this is Selwyn. She's 3. Can you say hi? Hi. And we've got 2 little girls here who just came to live with us in December. We are the proud foster parents. Do you want to say hi to everybody?
Hi.
Say hi, Jana. And can you give me a cry?
Hi,
There, oh, well, that's pretty good. There's our 1-year-old who just turned 2 this week. So we are privileged to get to be part of this community. For the better part of the last 8 years, we continue to serve in the military as a squadron commander out at the National Guard, and now work with the reserve unit doing operations out of War College. But we've also had the opportunity to serve this community, the community Kelly and I grew up in. We've been in the Iowa State House now for 8 years, and during that time, we ran in the east side of Polk County where people said Republicans should never run because they always lose. And we had the privilege of going out there, knocking on over 10,000 doors, and we didn't just talk to Republicans or conservatives. We knocked on doors of people in the audience here who are independent thinkers. We knocked on doors of moderate Democrats, and we talked with folks, and the first thing we said is, what's important to you? And overwhelmingly, what we heard consistently was the ability to raise our family in Iowa, the ability to help our education, the ability to have lower taxes, the ability to protect our Constitution, and the ability to thrive and be successful. And we took that to heart. When we won that first House race, we won it by double digits, almost 12 percentage points. We turned a blue district red, but then we went to work to serve the people. And here's what we've done in Iowa. In my time, we've been privileged to pass the largest tax cut 3 times. Billions of dollars back in Iowans' pockets. And guess what? When you give Iowans money back, they spend it in their community. They spend it on their business. They spend it on their family. They spend it on developing their farm. Here in Iowa, we have done some great things when it comes to backing up our brave men and women in uniform, our first responders. We made it a priority that when the rest of the country went a different direction and defunded the police, we prioritized backing the strongest Back the Blue legislation this country's ever seen. We're privileged by that because it's not only passing something, but with great leaders like Brenna Byrd, our next Attorney General, we have the ability to stand with law enforcement. We know that some of our most vulnerable communities are the folks who need a good relationship with our first responders, most importantly. When we look at what works in Iowa, we trusted Iowans during an unprecedented pandemic to be able to open up their businesses and take care of their families, get back to work. And when we cut billions of dollars to give Iowans back that money, they invested it and grew, and we were the fastest state to recover from the pandemic. We're one of the best stations going forward economically. We have $1 billion in the reserve, and we have $1.25 billion because of good leaders out here on both sides of the aisle who made that a priority. In Iowa, we've been successful. Unfortunately, when we look at what's going on in Washington today, we see a very different model for how government is the only solution and the people have no voice. Far too often, as we just saw yesterday, the so-called Inflation Reduction Act added almost another $1 trillion in government spending at a time where they're telling Iowans, you should spend less. You should tighten your belt. We're going to go ahead and print off more money and spend more of your tax dollars on projects. Now, many of those projects were never in the original intent of the bill. Very few of them are actually going to move towards reducing inflation. In fact, most nonpartisan groups and academic groups have said over the course of the next 2 years, we're going to see an increase in inflation. Inflation that has never been higher in my lifetime than it is right now. Now, if you think in the middle of a recession, raising taxes is the best way to move our country forward, I say look back 20 months ago when America was energy independent. If you think that by hiring tens of thousands of IRS agents to come and pay off the national debt by auditing not just billionaires, because let's be honest, there's about 1,000 of those, most of that is going to come on small and medium businesses in our community. And when our community starts being attacked by folks who are looking to cover down on the national debt, how innocent until proven guilty do you think those individuals will be? We were at a business yesterday that had had 26 audits by the IRS. And over that time, that individual had paid $100 or less in back pay to the IRS. It was the IRS who ended up paying that individual $10,000. But the amount of money out of pocket that he had to pay to get an attorney, to get an auditor, to get a CPA, $50,000. Now, maybe this is a good time to be an auditor and want to go and serve in Washington, D.C. But I know this so much, it's not a good time to be an Iowan or a small business owner. When I look out of this crowd, I see a reflection of Iowa. I see things that we care about. We care about our communities, our families. Families like yours, families like mine, are hurting. In the Inflation Reduction Act, so-called, if you want to go out and buy a $75,000 hybrid, good on you. I don't think those individuals need a $7,500 tax credit. Because for my family, driving nearly a 10-year-old minivan, I can't find a single EV minivan out there that'll hold 6 kids in the country today. And the ones that are supposed to come down the pipeline are looking at being over $100,000. That does not work for our families here in Iowa. What Washington is doing is saying we are going to dig ourselves out of a hole by taxing Iowans and Americans who make under $200,000. That's absurd. What we need to do is take what has worked so well here in Iowa and give it back. Give back your tax money and watch what happens with the economy, just like here in Iowa. Let Iowans decide their future on things like Second Amendment, voting rights, the future of our state, and they will impress you time and time again. Do not allow Washington to be the one that goes out there and does not disclose what they're going to vote on, pass it in the dead of night over a weekend, and then tell you, congratulations, we're reducing inflation, when in reality, they have just made what works so well here in Iowa, biodiesel, ethanol, wind, solar, that we're already working a giant cash cow while at the same time taxing those individuals 15% or more. And for anybody who's ever owned a business, you know that a tax is a tax is a tax, and we all end up paying it. Imagine right now, your family. What would happen if somebody took away a month of your salary off the bat this year? Would that have an impact? Would that hurt your bottom line? Would that decide what kind of a future you're going to be able to have for your kids? Well, you're darn right. Unfortunately, this year, Iowans saw over $5,000 being taken out of their pocket with the growth of inflation, a growth rate which is only going to continue. So Iowa, here's a different version of events. Here's a version where all eyes focus on what we do here and say, let's take the playbook from Iowa to Washington, D.C. We have an opportunity to change how Washington works, and it starts in Iowa's 3rd. You're going to see a lot of great folks this week, many of them who may want to be a president someday. They come to Iowa because Iowans are the ones who ask the questions, spend the time. But also, Iowa's at the crossroads. If Iowa turns this seat red, we have the opportunity to change the dynamic outlook on where we're going as a country. You know, this time last year, I was working with a group of volunteers trying to get folks out of Afghanistan. We were about to lower the flag over Kabul, and we had thousands of Americans and allies, many of whom on that first mission I talked about were our interpreters on the ground. They had served with us for decades, many 9+ combat tours. But when the Biden administration pulled out, not only did they leave behind billions of dollars in Balad Air Base, they left behind thousands of Americans and tens of thousands of Afghani allies who had worked with us hand in glove for decades. Now, I don't think I need to tell you what happened to many of those folks, but they're no longer with us today. Their families, many, are still outside the gate. Today, we continue to help these individuals through a program called Task Force Argo, and we've got 20 Catholic nuns trapped in Mazar Sharif who were left out in the field. We have Americans who went back to try and help their families when the father of their daughters was executed because he was Afghan Special Forces and the children were going to be sold as child brides. But on that night a year ago, this August, we moved multiple individuals north in an expedition that was the greatest evacuation north in Afghan's history to Mazar Sharif. And we did it through a group of volunteers, of fellow veterans, of individuals who wanted to do the right thing because we felt not only did we have a moral obligation, but that America's chapter in Afghanistan did not have to end darkly. It could end in an inspiration for the future. And I'm happy to say we flew out over 3,000 Afghan allies and Americans, many of whom are here today. One of my friends, now a proud American, an interpreter with us, his brother fought in the Afghan army, fought with us. We were able to get him and his family out on a night flight, but still, the majority of that family is left behind. For a future America, I would like to see what we have here in Iowa be leaders who follow through on their commitment. Leaders who don't vacillate and vote 100% of the time with whomever the speaker is, because God knows, my fellow legislators here, we've differed with our leadership. I voted against the speaker many a time. I've been kicked off a committee or two because I have an opinion that I want to put my constituents first. But always, I will be transparent, I will be honest, and I will be clear with where we are as a community and as a country. As we look at where we can go together, we have a great opportunity to serve, to take what works in Iowa to Washington, D.C. Team, I have fought for you on the battlefield. I continue to serve today. We have fought and led for you in the State House in Des Moines. And now Washington, D.C. is looking for new leadership. You have the opportunity to do this. I'm asking for the privilege of serving you in Iowa's 3rd Congressional District. We will continue to press to all 21 counties every month. We will continue to come to things like the Soapbox and debate. And we will challenge our opponent to spend time in the same way that we do, talking to Iowans. Come out, have a debate with us in all 21 counties. And guess what? We'll be there because every voice in Iowa matters. Your voice matters. I look forward to serving you as my bosses in Washington. Team, thank you so much. We're going to go see some steer and show at the cattle barn. We'll see you over there.